In the world not too long ago, there was a time when CJ Stroud was considered to be a top 5, top 7 quarterback in the National Football League, and Bryce Young looked like the biggest bust in the history of the NFL, worse than Jamarcus Russell. Now, fast forward to now, in both of these quarterbacks' last 5 games, Bryce Young has 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and has only been sacked 7 times, while on the other hand, CJ Stroud has thrown 4 touchdowns to a whopping 5 interceptions, and he's been sacked an abysmal 19 times. The tables have tremendously turned for both Bryce Young and CJ Stroud in terms of the trajectory of their career, because CJ Stroud, he ascended so fast to the point where the expectations kind of exceeded how good the actual player was. CJ Stroud, to me right now, he still looks like a top 10, top 12 quarterback, but obviously he isn't as good as what the Josh Allens, the Mahomes, the Lamars, and the Joe Burrows are. And Bryce Young, his career has done a complete 360. I went from watching him play his first 2 games this season, not being able to get the Panthers offense past the 50, to all of a sudden being able to go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, giving the Philadelphia Eagles all they can handle. And over the last month, Bryce Young has just straight up outplayed CJ Stroud. And it goes to show you that it's not always about how you start, but it's about how you finish. And I'm going to be honest, I kind of wrote off Bryce Young a little bit too early. I thought that once he got benched in favor of Andy Dalton, it was rats for him. And I was somebody that was a huge fan of Bryce Young. But I will admit, with how well he has played, not only has he deserved a 3rd year to prove himself, but the more and more you watch him, the more swagger he seems to gain by every single game. The more he tends to improve from a confidence standpoint, because his first 2 games this season, he was scared to throw the football more than 10, 15 yards downfield. Now he's throwing passes in the tight windows. He's throwing guys open. We see the Bryce Young that we expected when the Panthers traded up the farm to draft him first overall in 2023. Meanwhile, for CJ Stroud, he has just been in a complete slump. Now, it's not all his fault, because he did lose Stephon Diggs out with a season-ending injury. He was without Nico Collins for a good part of this season, and his offensive line has been in shambles. The offensive guard play has been awful, and the dude's getting thrown around like a whack-a-mole out there. You get a sack, you get a sack, you get a sack. Anytime you go up against a CJ Stroud, or anytime you go up against CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans, if you're a defensive lineman or edge rusher, you're looking at him as dog food. When you play the Houston Texans, you're excited if you're somebody who specializes in rushing the quarterback, because you know that it's a good opportunity to get your sack numbers up with how piss poor their offensive line play has been this year. Not only has the offensive line play been bad, but their offensive coordinator has severely gotten worse. You know, at one point, Bobby Slowick was a candidate for a lot of head coaching jobs around this time last year. Now, although he didn't get any of them, he was a hot candidate to end up landing a head coaching gig at the end of this season. But with how disappointing the Texans have been offensively this year, and with the sophomore slump that Stroud is in, not only is Bobby Slowick not going to get a head coaching job, but I don't know if D'Amico Ryans is going to end up bringing him back for another season. When your quarterback enters their 2nd season, that's the most pivotal season of their young career, because that's when you normally see them take a tremendous jump in improvement. Look at Trevor Lawrence. Look at the leap that he made from year 1 and year 2. The reasoning why he got that massive contract, why he's tied for being the highest paid quarterback in the NFL with Jordan Love, Jared Goff, and Joe Burrow, is based off how good he was his 2nd season. Look at Bryce Young. Year 1 wasn't that good. Year 2, outside of his first 2 games, the brother has been flat out outstanding. The 2nd season is the most pivotal to figuring out what you have at quarterback. It kind of is the defining season when it comes to evaluating if you have a guy that is good enough to lead you to a Super Bowl. And right now with CJ Stroud, we know that he is a solid quarterback, but we don't know if he ever is going to be as good as what a Lamar, Mahomes, or Josh Allen is. For all we know, he could more so trend around that Kirk Cousins territory for the rest of his career than he could be an elite quarterback. Now, CJ Stroud has had moments when he has shown that he still can play at a high level. He can be one of the better quarterbacks in the league, but it hasn't really been that often. And the next 3 games that the Texans have coming up, going up against the Dolphins, the Chiefs, and the Ravens, is not only going to define CJ Stroud, but it's also going to define the entirety of the Houston Texans and what they could do in the playoffs potentially. Because if they drop 2 out of their last 4, and let's say the Colts end up winning out, they could get the division took from right underneath them. It's really funny how the tables have turned between these 2 quarterbacks, because Panthers fans during the offseason, the reasoning for why there was such a divisive split between Panthers Nation due to the conversation about Bryce Young, is he good? Can he play? Should they give up on him? It's because of how good CJ Stroud was his rookie season. That kind of made Panthers fans kind of be like, you know what? We need to just go in a different direction, because if CJ Stroud is balling out like this, why is it Bryce Young? And remember, at the time when both of these guys got drafted last year, it was far believed that Bryce Young was in a better situation of the 2. So for CJ to be so good right out the gate, it kind of gave people a little bit of some unrealistic expectation in terms of Bryce Young and how good he actually could be, because everybody was thinking that if you're not good right away, you can never be good. But he slowly has improved throughout the year. Meanwhile, CJ Stroud, I'm not saying he's gotten worse, but you definitely have concerns about, if this is going to be a guy that can ever reach elite quarterback status again. And these next 3 games are going to greatly define CJ Stroud as a quarterback and where he ranks among the rest of the QBs in the league. Because right now, based off how he's looked this year, he's played at a top 12, a top 15 level, which is a far cry from how good he looked last year. He looked like a top 5 quarterback. And if you were to ask me right now, who would I rather have, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, I'll be lying to you if I wouldn't tell you that I'd rather have Bryce Young. He has just looked more confident. Meanwhile, CJ Stroud, you just don't see the same level of confidence in him throwing the football like you did last year. You see a guy that looks like he's second-guessing himself. He kind of is thinking too much out there. The game just doesn't seem like it's coming naturally to CJ Stroud anymore. He's turned the football over at a high rate. CJ Stroud last season went about the first half of the year before he threw an interception. And now this season, he's making mistakes that you never saw him make during year 1. It's funny how the tables turn.